G'day, I'm Alan Ablett, the groundsman at MacKillop Catholic Primary School in Andergrove. The school sits on 25 acres, surrounded on three sides by suburbia and bordered on the north by Macready's Creek mangroves. The 5 acres bordering the mangroves to the north of the property were covered in paragrass, which was impossible to maintain as the area would become extremely boggy, especially during the wet season. Rather than slashing endlessly, it was decided to revegetate this entire area. TAFE students planted out along the western side of the sports oval, and then the mid-years planted the northern section of the sports oval in 2006. These areas grew and interest grew with them. As interest grew, grants were won. With the increased interest and funding, all the students became involved. The project then began to snowball, and rather than simply revegetating the area, an entire outdoor environmental learning station became planned. This included outdoor classrooms as well as pontoons and rocky outcrops for water quality monitoring, a timeline and a Aboriginal serpent trail. A committee of 15 students, 4 parents and 2 staff members was formed in order to plan the environmental learning areas. The children were heavily involved in producing their own drawings of what they wanted the area to look like. These plans were then drawn into a concept plan, and once voted on, a final draft was made up. With the plan in hand, earthworks were started. Once the weeds were treated and earthworks near complete, the 2007 planting season soon got underway. All the students were involved, including the preschool, some of whom were only 4 years old. Many parents were also involved. This year we planted 1,500 trees. Principal Alison Blakey celebrating the 1500th. Spreadsheets show what was planted when and where, what weed treatments have been used and weed reinsurgence. Photo points are also very useful for comparison photos. A wire fence line was installed as vandals became a problem. As the weeds have been eradicated and planted with more natural local vegetation, bird life has returned and the improvement to the area in general has been really good. This area is now usable by the students and includes several outdoor classrooms and learning stations. The area had been cut up into manageable sections.
Waking up, Mount Warning, steaming from this ancient land is a part of me. Yes, I feel Aborigine. I am happy to be free, and I'm looking for Morocco. This ancient land is a part of me. Yes, I feel Aborigine. I am happy to be free, and I'm looking for Morocco.
Pioneer Catchment and Landcare Group nominated our project for the 2007 Queensland Landcare Awards. I attended the conference in August this year. Delegates and keynote speakers attended from all over the state and some from... After maintaining revegetation areas 2 and 3 for a full year, mostly as a volunteer lunchtime work group, maintenance was done by the students volunteering their lunch hours. Some days the group got very large, 30 or more students would turn up to help with mulching, weeding At one time the pontoon was seriously vandalised. Kids brought all sorts of gear in to repair it themselves. Discounting the lunchtime workgroup volunteers, maintenance of this area has cost less than slashing of the paragrass. As the area grew and became more self-sufficient, grants were sought for the remaining couple of acres. Revegetation areas 4 and 5, sponsored by Hale Creek, Pioneer Catchment and Landcare, and Natural Resources and Water. In line with the grants, $8,000 worth of trees and understory plants were ordered. 7S were the first in line. They spent the 2 morning sessions in the drier part and planted out 250 trees. Prep G were next in line. They spent the first morning session in the very wet, boggy area and planted out 105 trees. 5M spent 2 morning sessions planting 190 trees. Once the trees were planted, they were watered in well using the 1,000 litre water tank. Once all the planting was done, 5M had a good look around. Mrs. Martin had last year off and was very impressed with the new bridges. This is what the outdoor classroom looked like and the steps along building it. Here's Mrs. Martin's class 2 years ago planting it out. Here are her class this year in 2009 walking through that same doorway. 6K came down with their buddy class 1P, who also brought a good number of parents, and we got through 205 trees in a morning session. 7B came down on the last day of the first term and we finished off the first 1,000 trees for the term. Soil and pasture improvement programs started in 2004 were cut in 2007. This has resulted in all sorts of grass-like weeds such as rat's tails moving in onto the playgrounds. It took a full week to mow a couple of paddocks, and so a late start to term 2. A workplace health and safety issue had arose just before the Easter break. Some unknown persons were dangerously pruning shrubs and trees around the children's play forts. It had been thought that this was rectified. However, returning from the Anzac Day weekend on Monday morning, I found examples of this sort of thing throughout the entire school. You can see here a large number of sharp protruding sticks have been left in and around the preschool cubby house. This is an area where children run and play freely. The chance of a child losing an eye here is just absolutely immense. While inspecting the damage, a neighbour came over and informed me that the school principals had been involved. This could only be seen as a deliberate attempt to force my resignation.